I have 5 members online, which is a quorum. So it is 2:30. We can get started.
Perfect. I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. And then if Jessica, if you would like to take us through meeting procedures and then do a roll call.
Yes, thank you. Let me be on the right slide. Good afternoon. This meeting is being recorded and broadcast on the city's YouTube channel. Please remember to mute yourself during the meeting when you're not speaking. The chat function for this meeting has been disabled and all chats will go directly to me. The city and MPO reserve the right to mute people or turn individual videos off to minimize distractions during the meeting. And I'll proceed to a roll call vote. Crick? Sorry, just a second. I was making sure I'm not missing somebody in the waiting room. Cronin?
Here.
DeVries?
Here.
Dowling?
Here.
Gentry?
Here.
And Weigel?
Here.
Okay, we have a quorum.
Great. Moving on to agenda item B for public comment. Is there anyone in person or online for public comment?
There is not.
Okay. And then moving on to agenda item C, the approval of the minutes from the May 7th, 2024 meeting. Unless anyone has any comments or questions about those, I will entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Can we do a roll call?
Yeah, Cronin?
Aye.
DeVries?
Aye.
Dowling?
Aye.
Gentry?
Aye.
Weigel?
Aye.
And Crick? I don't know if you want to vote on the minutes, if you're prepared to do that.
I am. I would approve.
Okay, thank you.
All right, then move.
Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. Moving on to item D, our regular agenda items, starting with the 2023 to 2026 Transportation Improvement Program Amendment 8.
Thank you very much. Jessica is working on sharing the screen.
All right, there we go.
Can you go to page
Yes.
2? Perfect. Hello, CC Riley, Transportation Planner 2. This is the 8th and final scheduled amendment to the 2023 to 2026 Transportation Improvement Program. The TIP implements the Long Range Transportation Plan T2050, and this amendment is associated with KDOT's interest in changing or adding projects to the TIP. This document was put out for a 15-day public comment period from June 6th to June 21st, and no public comments were received. There's one project being amended in the proposed TIP before you today, and one new project, both proposed by KDOT. The new project proposed by KDOT is for an emergency repair to the traffic light at the intersection of US 40, K10, and US 59 Iowa Street in Lawrence. The project is shown on the amendment summary as TIP number 153. The amendment requested by KDOT is to revise TIP number 236 to remove federal funds and add a 50-50 cost split between KTA and the state. The revision reduces the grand total by about $4 million. Additional information on these projects can be found on the TIP amendment agenda item. And staff is requesting TAC provide a recommendation of approval for this TIP amendment and forward the item on to Policy Board, which will meet July 18th. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thanks. Does anyone have any questions or comments? If not, I will entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve the 8th Amendment of the TIP.
Second.
All right, a motion and a second. Can we do a roll call vote?
Yeah, Crick?
Aye.
Cronin?
Aye.
DeVries?
Aye.
Dowling?
Aye.
Gentry?
Aye.
Weigel?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
Great. Moving on to agenda item number 2, which is the Transportation Emissions Reduction 816 program.
Great. We discussed at our last meeting and had a presentation of the Transportation Emission Reductions TERP program funding, which is part of the US DOT's Transportation Established Carbon Reduction Program funding. And we are here today with the application that we received. We received one application after this call for projects was out from May 1st to June 27th. We heard from a few other different project sponsors or those inquiring about some questions and or intention to apply, and only in the end ended up receiving one application. That's for the Lawrence Mass Street Multimodal Project. We have a project sponsor here to help answer any questions if you have any about their project. Their project is looking at improvements of protected bikeway, and complete sidewalks and crossing improvements and bus stop improvements for the section of Massachusetts Street between 14th and 23rd Street. How do you make that go away? That's not what I want. Okay. Based on our scoring criteria, we felt the project scored appropriately. We did have additional follow-up conversation with KDOT and the project sponsor to understand, basically based on the constraints about requiring the 2022 funding, because we have 4 years of funding to distribute with this project award, needing to be obligated in a sooner time frame. And so we discussed with follow-up, which we noted here, that funding could be obligated by 2025 for some preliminary engineering phases and shift that local funding to other phases of the project. And that timing could be facilitated with other funding sources as needed. Obviously, this project noted in its application, it's also pending some grant funding for transportation alternatives from the state, which have not been announced. So that's additional kind of criteria that we knew would need to be part of that conversation. This project shows evidence of mode shift supporting multimodal improvements and proposed VMT reductions, which support the carbon reduction and state transportation emissions program. So I'd be happy to forward any questions if you have any to Dave Cronin, who's the TAC member who represents Lawrence, or project engineer Aaron Parker, who is here in person. If you have any questions about this. Otherwise, today we're looking for a recommendation to MPO Policy Board to award the funding for this project.
Great, thank you. Does anyone have any questions?
Real quick, Jessica, if there's any questions for Allison on the KDOT side, I can certainly relay any of that information onto her as well.
Thank you.
All right, unless there's anyone else, I would entertain a motion.
Would you like to open it up for public comment?
Yes. We can go ahead and open it for public comment.
We do not have any in the room, and there's a handful of folks who've joined online, but no one has indicated by raising their hand that they would like to speak.
Okay. So unless anyone else has public comment or any other questions, I will entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve.
Second?
All right, motion and a second. Can we get a vote?
Yeah, Crick,
Aye.
Cronin,
Aye.
DeVries,
Aye.
Dowling,
Aye.
Gentry.
Aye.
Voigt, I see you joined us. I'm not sure if you're prepared to vote on this item or not. We can skip you if not. And Weigel.
Aye.
Okay. Motion carries 6-0 with Voigt abstaining.
Great. Moving on to the third agenda item, which is the 2024 Unified Planning Work Program Amendment 1.
Okay. It is pretty typical mid-year that the MPO staff prepare an amendment to the Unified Planning Work Program. This is our federally required document that describes how the federal transportation funding for the Lawrence Douglas County Metropolitan Planning Organization will be used. This document details the work activities and hours budgeted for the project. We put this UPWP out for a 15-day public comment period and received no comments. This amendment is changing budgeted time to actuals based on worked on the plan, based on workload that's been built into the grant. It adds a new Planner 1 to backfill the hours that have been shifted for some of the existing FTEs to some local transportation planning work. It updates direct expenses and that are as needed in the grant, and adds some details about a couple different tasks in addition to a new activity for Johnson County Transportation Study that the MPO has been invited to participate in on the steering committee for. So that's what we're looking at for this amendment to the UPWP. I'd be happy to entertain any questions you may have about this amendment.
Great, thanks. Does anyone have any comments or questions? And if not, I will entertain a motion.
Point of information, we just need to ask for public comment.
Oh, yes, thank you. And then if anyone here has public comment.
There's no one in the room, and no one has indicated by raising their hand online they would like to provide comment.
Great. Are there any specific ones that require public comment, or do we just typically want to do that for each action item?
We do that typically for each action item.
Okay, perfect, thank you. All right, well, if no one has public comment, then I will entertain a motion.
I'd move to recommend approval of the 2024 Unified Planning Work Program Amendment 1.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Can we do a vote?
Yes, Crick?
Aye.
Cronin?
Aye.
DeVries?
Aye.
Dowling?
Aye.
Gentry?
Aye.
Voigt? Okay, thumbs up. Weigel?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries unanimously.
All right, moving on to our last agenda item, which is the 2025 Unified Planning Work Program planning discussion.
Yeah, so we usually take the opportunity towards the end of each summer of the year to begin a conversation with the Technical Advisory Committee about our 2025 work program. I have updated, based on our conversation last year, some of the things that I think are either remaining in the work program for this year and show you this list kind of the thoughts that you've had. So I updated the things that were previously said 23 and if they're now into 24 and what will carry over to 25. And so I can kind of just talk about those things that we know that'll be ongoing or exist in this space. A lot of this I base on the work that we have. It's really annoying. Going on, I'm going to show you this. I made this graphic. It may be kind of hard to read, but it's in detail. But to kind of show you a lot of the things that, for those of you that are new to this conversation, a lot of the things that we do are in a rotating cycle. Some of those are contingent based on our federal requirements, where you can see kind of the frequency and are kind of set by some federal requirements and expectations generally that we try to follow in that range and consistency. And so really between each of the 5-year cycles for the Metropolitan Transportation Plan or Transportation 2050, we have the opportunity to update all the mode-specific plans. And so this kind of lays out our timeline. The black stuff is what we really know and have committed to do based on requirements. These boxes in these ranges are kind of where I would imagine that we would need to do those, although I think they have some flexibility that we're going to need to figure out in terms of how we can slate all of that work and get it scheduled in a work plan. This kind of, you can see, is already a lot of work. So if we decide to add something, we're going to be finishing the Vision Zero work. We'll have the electric vehicle readiness plan. We know there's a future call for projects again for carbon reduction next year. We know things like we'll have a UPWP and TIP amendments and other things like that. And so we kind of lay those out in what work we know is going to exist. And so one of the things we know is the bike plan update will start, the Lawrence one specifically. We have then the countywide one, which was previously shortly behind that. We'll need to kind of evaluate that need for update, which is in here. And then talk about, the 2020 adopted Safe Routes to School plans and where we're at kind of on the need for all of those. We're going to need to assess some of that. So I'm not sure today that I would say like 100% those will be in the work plan, but that's kind of what we've laid out in the trajectory of looking at what we're going to need and have to do. There's some other things on the list, of course, that are more less descriptive, thinking about what do climate action plan implementation look like, or what does some of the Safe Streets and Roads for All Vision Zero implementation look like in terms of the MPO's role in whatever those planning or programs or projects might need to look like. This is just obviously a text list of some of those same things. Previously, we had some notation about a Lawrence pedestrian crossing evaluation in the pedestrian plan. If that doesn't happen at the level we need in Vision Zero, what needs to happen there? We've had on the conversation with the TAC in the past couple of years, a conversation about access management planning or other corridor studies. So I would kind of throw that out to you all to have a conversation or thoughts about which things really stand out to you as important, what is maybe missing, or other things you'd like to propose to include the MPO in for 2025.
Great. Thank you for putting that all together, Jessica. Does anyone have comments, ideas, or any thoughts?
Jessica, this is Ryan Dowling. If I'm reading that chart correctly, the next MTP update is not until 2026.
So the next MTP would, so if we know that it has to be adopted by the first quarter of 2028, we typically have a 12 to 18 month process. So that's what we would be looking at to begin that, year-long planning process. Some of this is not all public, but we do the back end. We have a model consult probably and other stuff in that range. And so we would be looking at that timeline kind of to support that long range plan.
Yep. Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, I think this is kind of helpful to visualize, to understand where stuff falls in. This exists in my head, but I think it's helpful for other people to.
Oh yeah, it's good. It's not just when it's due by. It's good to have the the planning process in place and display that, not just here it's due this time. Yeah. So I like that.
All right. Anyone else?
One thing I would put a comment out for others would be interested, especially to hear from others, is corridor studies, because it's something that we've talked about, we've done previously, and there's a lot of bigger level work going on or in and around Lawrence and Baldwin and Eudora, and what do some of those other corridors look like, not just maybe within city limits, but corridors along certain routes and the way that is. So, I think that's probably something that could be done in conjunction with some of the other work that we're probably doing. It could have a pedestrian or a bicycle element to it, depending upon what it is. But it feels like we're at a moment to probably start having some very long-term looks at some of our critical corridors, both in the cities and connecting to cities for just the region going forward. So I would put that forward as something for others to talk about or see what other thoughts are on that one.
Anything in particular? Like if you were going to hone in on the top priority?
This is just me here. So, I'm just thinking kind of off the top of my head. I think probably, the Iowa Street 59 corridor, probably, if not all the way through Lawrence, all the way to the county line to the south, is probably one to maybe have a conversation to look at. I think the city did a good one not too long ago, and MPO did it too on East 23rd Street. So maybe there's a corresponding one of West 23rd Street, and maybe one that even goes from Lawrence city limits east to Eudora, to have a conversation about what that looks like as a, if it's not just in Lawrence, but a regional look at that one. I think, Wakarusa is probably one that the city hasn't studied in a long time that might warrant some kind of a conversation given what's going on in and around it, both in terms of the land use, but in the way that it interconnects with 6th Street and 15th and 23rd and the way it kind of goes over towards Clinton Lake. And the city's looking at, North 2nd Street and that area kind of going north out of town as one of their CIP projects. So is there a corresponding connection there that needs to be looked at for a regional emphasis too? So just top of my head real quick, those are the ones that kind of pop up, but I'm by no means saying it's a ranked order or, can't say I put a great ton of thought into that list. So hopefully y'all got some ideas or add to that too.
I would say if we're looking at corridors in Lawrence, that 6th Street's an important one to look at. Would probably be a little higher than Meade and West 23rd Street because we looked at that. It's been 20 years, but that one's been looked at. And we've made the improvements on East 23rd Street. Now we're doing more maintenance work on 6th Street, but a corridor plan really between Mass and Wakarusa could be something that could be on the to-do list if there's time and energy to do it in the work plan. Other than that, I think just piggybacking on the Vision Zero planning work and prioritizing maybe what implementation of projects that may come out of that, if that's possible to include that in the work plan, that may even tie into that that pedestrian crossing bullet that you have on your list, Jessica, that we've talked about before. Improving and prioritizing crossings after we get the data. So that would probably, looking at your list, rise to the top of my list, I guess, or my thoughts or priorities on things that would be important, at least for the city of Lawrence. But other than that, you have a lot of work planned. I know the Lawrence Bike Plan takes a lot of update. That will take a lot of time. So we're just recognizing all the existing work that you have planned already may be difficult to take on other larger corridor projects, at least in 25, but those are my thoughts.
Yeah.
I'm curious.
Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think thinking about that, I just kind of laid those things out. We've done those every 5 years. I think some, whether the city or any of the cities or the county version, if they've implemented enough of the plan that it needs to be updated, I think we can have that look now. There may be work that just because something's 5 years old, if it hasn't been implemented to the level where we feel like we need to get to the next level of planning work on it, I don't know that it necessarily means we have to do it to just do it. I think we need to really sit back and look at what's the next most valuable thing for the region. And so I think we're willing to entertain that in terms of timelines. Obviously, there's not federal requirements around some of those mode-specific plans. We, as long as the planning work that we do have is still sound in the sense that it's there, it just hasn't been implemented on a timeline where anything significant enough is done. So I think we can evaluate some of those things also, or have a smaller, more minor updates if we don't have to do the biggest value of process in terms of time and effort. Ryan, I would ask, I guess, from KDOT's perspective, if they have, I know they're working in the K-10 corridor and they really stopped that 5-county study update outside. They've included us in some of it, but really they're looking only to the Douglas County line. Is there any planning work that you're aware of in the next year or even two that KDOT will be leading that would impact Douglas County?
Oh, I mean, the first thing that comes to my head is the World Cup, but which department was manning that study by chance? Or was it a planning study?
I guess I don't know what you're speaking to in that regard. I did just seen that email from you about that, and we haven't really been involved in any other regional conversations around World Cup planning.
Yeah, so I don't know if there's, to the extent of the corridor studies with K10 that are currently going on, I can't speak to any of those, but I can certainly find out and uncover some information regarding what's going on at the moment.
Okay, that would be helpful for future. Sorry, Margaret, I want to get back to your comment.
I was just going to say that I've read cursorily, and so I know zero details about the city budget, maybe de-emphasizing the completion of the loop and how that fits into the planning process. I don't know if that's related at all to what is on your list, but I do think it's important that it stay a priority in the long run to finish it up.
Yeah, I have just a quick answer to that, and then Dave, you can add anything if you'd like. But my thoughts in terms of that is I know that as we're looking at scoping what the Lawrence Bike Plan includes, that we're planning to kick off later this year, that process, which will probably be a year-long process in a bike plan update for the Lawrence Bikes Plan portion of that one of the things we'll be looking at, again, is the connection, one of the next connection of the loop, which is really from the depot to Bircham Park, and looking at that connection. We've done that before in the last two bike plans. We have some alignment. We've done a special alignment study. There's obviously been additional work since, but that's one of many things that we're going to kind of hone in on, I think, in that scope of work, in addition to I've been looking at some best practice research for people doing bike plan updates, and a lot of communities are doing what they call bike plus plans, and it's really to address the shared micromobility issues, items. So whether that's electric scooters, electric bikes, one wheels, all of the different other modes that operate, some in similar ways to bicycles and less like cars, and others in a little bit different ways, but still really in this both shared and micromobility space. So we'll be thinking about for our bike plan, what are those kind of next steps that we would need to do in that space, particularly for the Lawrence plan, and then we can do the same thing for the countywide plan. Margaretta, maybe one of the things I would ask you is, when we did one of the last bike plans we did, I don't know if it's 5 years ago or 10 years ago, KU also had a bike plan development that I think
10 years ago,
Adam
I
worked
think.
on 10 years, okay. And at that time, so, one of the things we would want to talk to you about, I think, is what items in terms of would the university want to engage with us on relation to, like, Lawrence Bike Plan type stuff, or and some of those things. So
it's a good point. Let's talk about that sometime. I think there are ways that we should, but obviously this is a off-the-cuff conversation where I haven't really thought about it very much. So let's plan to talk about that.
Okay. We'll follow up with that. Dave, did you have anything? I mean, I think loop stuff, some of it just got pushed out. It's still going to be in the conversation for the budget, and there's additional planning work that the city of Lawrence is proposing to do that needs to be done before they can move forward with an alignment. That's kind of the last stance I heard in that regard. So, Adam, I saw you on mute at one point. There you go.
I know you've got a lot of corridors already on the list, but a smaller one I thought of is, KU's Gateway Project Development at 11th and Mississippi. I think from that location down Mississippi to 9th Street to downtown is a corridor that could probably use some thought when it comes to both transportation and economic development, kind of hand in hand. So that might be something I'd be interested in having a good plan about.
Adam, what do you think about extending that to Iowa Street, having 9th Street from going both ways? Because if you think of that corridor as both the entry and an exit, that could maybe impact in both directions.
True. Yeah, I suppose in my head I'm thinking of the commercialized areas of 9th Street and non-commercialized as you head between Mississippi and Iowa. It can get into areas of kind of full residential, but I do hear you. That would be more maybe dynamic if there was also a connection out that way. The other thing I was going to talk about is what you just brought up, Jessica. So I was hoping there was a way to kind of integrate micromobility planning in bicycle planning. A lot of things have changed since the city and university had bike share service, and there's a lot of different models out there. So it'd be nice to think through that in a planning process, ownership, operation, the different flexible and inflexible ways that can be managed would be good to have spelled out in a future update.
Great. Does anyone else have anything?
We will follow up and do some additional research. Typically how this process works, it's just a discussion, and we will evaluate and kind of hone in on our schedule, have some other priority conversations to discuss kind of where we think we're at. There's a few things obviously I need to follow up with some of you to see about feasibility and coordination or understanding about other things that are happening. And what we do is we will do that as a staff and then plan to bring back to you in November or December for your approval a draft UPWP for 2025. So that will be our process, and that's typically how that goes, and we'll evaluate all of these ideas, and they generated some good, I think, conversation about where we need to be looking and what opportunities we may have to maximize all of our coordinated work. So thank you for that.
Great. Thank you, Jessica. So moving on to agenda item E, quick updates. We have an update on the Vision Zero Transportation Safety Action Plan.
Yes, that work is underway. We have been spending dozens and dozens of hours working on engagement, and we have been tabling in all of the communities, Lawrence, Eudora, and Baldwin City. It's been hot. We've handed out lots of flyers. We've gotten some paper surveys. We've talked to a lot of people about this work. And we are going to have the survey extended and open, I think, through the end of July. And then we will be working with our steering committee to continue that conversation in that planning work and the deeper dive kind of into the data than what we've looked at so far with that steering committee. I've included the link on the agenda to the project website, which includes the recordings and presentations from the steering committee meetings. And so go take a look at that and take our survey and share it with people that you may know that asks about safe or transportation safety and experiences in our communities.
Thank you. Does anyone have any comments or questions? Cool. So moving on, it looks like we have our next meeting set for August 6th, 2024. And unless there's anything else, it looks like we are going to be adjourned.
That will be all.
Great. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks.